Hello, welcome everyone to our collaborative breakdown of UFC 280, Oliveira versus Makhachev. Probably the best card all year. I mean, we got a absolutely stacked slate of fights coming to you live from Abu Dhabi on Saturday morning, and I'm excited to break it down as always with Nick here for Dine Sports. Nick, how are you tonight? Obviously, looking forward to this huge card. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Probably, arguably the best card of the year. Just a ton on the line for a lot of these fighters. We got two title fights, Jan and O'Malley. I know we're both excited about Fiorot potentially fighting for a title shot. I mean, and then you go down the card and there's just huge matches that could probably headline a fight night on the prelims when you're looking at like Mohammed Brady and some of these other ones. So I'm very excited. Yeah, I'll be up early watching this card, and I love the day fights. I don't mind the time zone difference at all. This should be a good one for sure.
Yep. And again, for those watching, it will be a 10 a.m. start time for the early prelims, Eastern Time, United States, with the main card kicking off 2 p.m. Obviously, headlining this card, the lightweight title up for grabs. Currently vacant with Charles Oliveira fighting Islam Makhachev. Now, Oliveira had the half-pound weight miss his last time out, and that's why the belt has been vacated. But he's the champ. We all respect him as the champ. He's been getting these massive wins at lightweight. And, I don't expect there to be an issue on the scales this time around, but we're recording this prior to weigh in. So obviously, you will want to check out our full write up Saturday for any changes that may come. But I mean, this fight is just incredible. You have an 11 fight win streak going up against a 10. Islam Makhachev, obviously the real deal. His grappling, his control, evident in every fight thus far that he is that Khabib style when it comes to exchanging with guys on the mat, and for that reason, he's favored here as the challenger in his first shot, for UFC gold. But Charles Oliveira, man, you just cannot disrespect him. I mean, we've seen time and time again him proving people wrong. He's the underdog again in this matchup, and I'm taking Oliveira once more. I mean, you look at his resume, you look at the guys he's got wins over, especially recently with the wins Poirier, Justin Gaethje. Like these are higher level guys than what we've seen Makhachev in there against. And I think it really is disrespect to have him as the underdog against a guy who just doesn't have the resume that stacks up quite like his. Obviously, the skills there for Makhachev. He should be stronger. The sambo, the wrestling, he's going to do great in those areas. It's just Oliveira is such a potent jujitsu practitioner that I see him taking a lot of that away from Islam in those exchanges. He's going to have threats of submissions. He's going to have the sort that will prevent Islam from shooting recklessly in this fight. And honestly, on the feet, I think there's a massive discrepancy. Charles has a reach advantage. He's going to be able to hit Islam in the clinch much more often, much more frequently than Islam can throw back. And at range, obviously, Oliveira is lethal as well. Constant forward pressure, the kicks, the strikes from range. I mean, he's an animal, and we've seen he's relentless in his attack, even on this championship run. Doesn't seem very hesitant. Doesn't seem nervous. Doesn't mind taking shots. And seeing him exchange with Gaethje, with Dustin Poirier on the feet, makes me confident he's going to outclass Islam while this fight is standing. So, I mean, we could dig into this a bunch. I have a couple more points I'd love to get to, but first, I'd like to hear your take on this fight.
Yeah, I think you already know that I'm on the other side of this one. I will admit I've disrespected Charles Oliveira in the past. I did finally come around his last time out against Justin Gaethje and backed him. He was a favorite in that spot. The thing about Charles is, man, he gets rocked in every fight, and there's just something about him that it doesn't seem like he should be winning these fights so easily. But for me, the difference here, compared to the Poirier matchup, the Chandler matchup, the Gaethje matchup, it's styles. Styles make fights, and we've seen throughout history the wrestler able to handle the jujitsu player, and I think that's what we're going to get here. So yeah, obviously Charles is the better striker. I'll give you that. But Islam Makhachev absorbs 0.84 strikes per minute in the UFC, which is ridiculous. And what does Chandler, Gaethje, and Poirier all have in common? They were coming forward, trying to strike with Charles. Islam's striking is a means to an end. It's a means to get the fight to the mat. It's to grapple. I agree. Charles is definitely live for a knockout here. That's the one path I think he has. I don't see him submitting him on the mat. I don't even think that's possible. Islam is positioned before submission, and Charles is kind of the opposite. He's willing to sell out for positions, but that's going to be trouble for him. I think he's going to end up on his back more than he's used to. We even saw Chandler have some success wrestling early in their fight. And really, man, I do agree that the line's getting a bit too wide, but when you look back a few weeks or even months ago, the line was wider when this was a potential matchup. So I think it has closed a bit. The other thing you have to factor in is that this is taking place in Abu Dhabi, a place Islam's very comfortable. He has Khabib in his corner, obviously. His whole team's with him. I know Charles's team is with him as well, but that trip from Brazil to Russia and Abu Dhabi historically has not gone well for most fighters. Charles is an outlier, though. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say he's not a live dog. He certainly is. The one time we saw Islam lose was that KO to a really not great fighter in Adriano Martins. But at the same time, I mean, both of these guys since that point, I think you'd agree, they're not the same fighter they were 4, 5, 6 years ago. And there is a lot that's being talked about in terms of resume for Islam. But when Khabib got his title shot, we were kind of dealing with the same thing. And I mean, you look at some of the wins. I mean, Davi Ramos, arguably a better jiu-jitsu player than Charles. Obviously, not nearly the striker.
I don't know what you mean by that. Not at all.
In
Charles
terms
is
of
the top
credential jiu-jitsu,
top submission artist in UFC history.
I mean, in terms of pure jiu-jitsu, Ramos is more accomplished, but I mean, if we're talking like ADCCs and things like that. But how well has this Sarukian win aged? I mean, in all the wins that Charles has are over these brawling strikers. He hasn't really taken on the wrestler. And so, yeah, this is a new stylistic test. I don't think, I don't think Islam's going to stand and trade with him. I don't think he's going to come forward throwing bombs like we saw all three of those guys who he just sliced through did. And I'll give Charles his credit. He's dangerous on the ground, but I just think positionally, he's not going to be in any good spots. Like, I don't think he's going to be on top. I don't see him shooting for takedowns in his own takedown defense. And this is more because he's willing to play in his guard. It's below 60% in the UFC, and this is against no wrestler as good as Islam Makhachev. So to me, stylistically, Islam's the side, and I think it's funny that we're hearing so many touts and so many people on Charles this week, but the line really isn't moving that much. Like, Islam's still getting the money. The books want people to play this plus money on Charles, and I'm sure they're going to. Will I be shocked if Charles caught him in an exchange? No. It's a great fight. I'm so hyped for this fight. But to me, stylistically, Islam is a nightmare matchup. And I think he's a nightmare matchup for everyone in this division, except for maybe the Armans or the Gamrots, the guys that can really scramble in wrestling. But even so, I think he's better at it. So, yeah, there's definitely a hype machine behind Islam as far as being Khabib's protege and things like that. There's probably a little bit more gas on him than there needs to be on this line. But if I were lining it, I'd probably have Islam minus 140, minus 150. But yeah, I think he's the side. I think he's going to win here. It's his own backyard to an extent. The crowd's going to be behind him. You heard it not weigh-ins, at face-offs, Charles getting booed brutally. And I don't think he's used to that. It's a bit of a head game to a point. I've doubted Charles in the past and been wrong. So I'm not going to go crazy betting on Islam here, but I do think he's the side. And I think when this fight was announced months ago, we were looking at minus 300s and stuff, and people weren't going crazy about it. So to me, Islam's the side. I get you've made a ton of money on Charles, so just keep riding your horse, and I respect you for that. But to me, stylistically, I just think it's a problem. And unless Islam can't take him down, which I don't see being an issue, I think Charles has to catch him on an entry. And like, the odds of that happening aren't very high. And Charles is going to be dangerous early, but he's going to be very, very dangerous early. But as this fight wears on, we really haven't seen him in the later rounds lately. Like, is he going to carry that power into the 4th and 5th? Because that's the fight that Islam wants to make, man. That's father's plan, as Khabib used to preach, and his father used to preach. And I just think stylistically, this is a tough spot. So I know I'm getting passionate here. It's because you're passionately on the Charles side. I think it's good that we give listeners both sides of this coin. But this is an awesome fight, and probably one of the most anticipated fights the UFC's had in years. So I'm hyped. I think Islam's the side. I respect people backing Charles, but I just think stylistically it's a tough spot.
Yeah, and I mean, having the read on Charles, I would agree that a long fight is not going to favor him. I really like. I mean, the under 2.5 is at -150. As a Charles backer, I think he will need to get it done inside of, those first 3 rounds. Islam certainly has the potential to finish as well if that is going to be the case in this fight. Charles being hyper aggressive, he's not afraid of the takedown. I think it is going to be a lot of forward pressure striking. And then whether it's catching in an entry, just an exchange on the feet, or, obviously threatening with submissions when those shots do come. I think Islam is going to struggle to have sustained top control in this fight, even if he ends up, winning in the fourth, fifth by decision with a control heavy game plan. I don't think the top control is going to come easily, and I think Charles is going to offer a lot in terms of at least sub attempts when they are in those positions on the mat. But yeah, certainly live at this number. I'm backing him. I think the knockout does come, but Islam's a monster too. I'd not be surprised to see this fight go, anyway.
Yeah, and let me just say this. I know you're a Charles backer, but if I were you, I would just bet him on the money line. Because if you're taking that
Yeah.
under, I mean, why pay juice into that when you can get him at plus money? But yeah, for me, man, it's Islam's such a defensive striker, and all these guys Charles has been slicing through, they're very aggressive offensive strikers. Islam is not that. There's a reason that he has a positive striking differential in spite of barely throwing anything. Under 1 strike absorbed per minute across how many UFC fights? 10,
Yeah,
12?
and again, those are like they're amazing defensive numbers, but it's not like he's just standing the whole time and defending strikes in that manner. The number is low because a majority of the time it is top control, it is sustained pressure, and that's where the striking differential, like you're only absorbing that many per minute because a
Right.
majority of the time minutes are spent with him on top. But no,
Right.
his defensive it's like best ever. It's insane.
But
But
that creates the
again,
takedown entries. When you are coming forward and striking, it's easier to take a guy down when he's coming towards you. And Charles
certainly.
isn't going to be moving on his back foot. So stylistically, anything can happen. It's a fight. And Charles has the power, more power than Islam's seen in any of his recent matchups. And people talking about Charles by sub, I don't see that at all. I think the KO is what you have to be afraid of as an Islam backer. But yeah, for me it's Islam, for you it's Charles. I think we could go 2 hours on this one fight, but I guess we just move on.
Yeah, well, we'll move down the card now, but you do not want to miss that main event. I am hyped up for that. In the co-main, the bantamweight title on the line with the champ Aljamain Sterling facing TJ Dillashaw here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this fight. Which way you're leaning?
Yeah, man. Honestly, I've been on the Aljo side, like slight lean, but like the more I kind of think about it, the more I dig into it, I'm not as confident as I thought I would be. I mean, TJ looks great. Everyone knows he popped for PEDs. Like he looks like he did when he popped. He's in amazing shape. The fight with Sandhagen, I thought that he lost. But this is a very different stylistic matchup. Sandhagen was never trying to take him down. I think Sterling, to get a good win here, he's going to want to take him down. But yeah, TJ's takedown defense, I think, is among the best in bantamweight history, around 86, 87%. I keep going back and forth. I mean, TJ's going to put out more volume on the feed. He's the more crisp striker. I think he has a slight power advantage as well. I mean, the thing about Aljo, and the reason I'm not always high on him is also why he's so good. It's his funky style. Like he's the funk master. Like it's these strange angles. It's really tough to prepare for a guy like that. And if he can get on TJ's back, we saw in the Peter Yan rematch that he can hang there for a full round and steal a round. But is he going to be able to do that for 2 rounds? Is he going to be able to do that for 3 rounds? Maybe. I mean, he's the bigger guy when you see them at face-offs. He's definitely going to have some reach here. He likes to throw those kicks. But yeah, I mean, TJ's just so sound technically. I find myself going back and forth on this one. I was on Aljo earlier in the week. I feel myself slightly leaning TJ now. I want to see weigh-ins. I think it matters big time for both guys. Aljo almost always looks amazing at weigh-in. TJ, that's not always the case, but if he looks as good as he has leading up to weigh-in this week, then maybe I switch my pick. But this is one, yeah, you guys listening, check out our article Saturday morning for my final pick on this fight. To me, this is the toughest fight on the card to call, maybe. Like, there's a couple others that are up there, but man, I find myself going back and forth on this one.
Yeah, I'm on the Aljo side. I don't like the 175 though. I'm not sure how involved I'm going to be.
Yeah,
I mean, TJ, he never lost the bantamweight belt. He was stripped, but no man ever beat him and took that championship away.
it's true.
He's certainly deserving of the shot. You go back to the Sandhagen fight. It's not a stellar performance, but he did enough to get the win. And honestly, after that layoff, it is impressive to see. It's just the fact that that's the only fight since. I don't know what we're to expect here against Aljo. I agree with most of the points you made. Dillashaw should be winning a majority of the exchanges on the feet. It's just if Sterling is able to, secure position, secure takedowns in this fight, which should be his game plan once again. I think he is going to realize success against the smaller guy. I've been on him these past three fights, cash tickets. I'm a big believer in Aljo, but it's just this stylistically is a bit of a puzzle, and I'm not sure. Just based on his performance against Jan in the second fight, seeing Aljamain in the fourth round, the fifth round, how he's going to look against Dillashaw here. If he's already going to have three in the bank, or what this fight's going to look like at that point. So I'm certainly not eager to bet him at minus 175. But I think Aljo is the side. I think he's the most dynamic grappler in this division. And I think you're going to see a lot of guys at the top, as we have for some time, just struggle against that, backpack he's able to put on. And, the jujitsu we see out of him training with at Sarah BJJ and with the team there in New York. So I think this is a tough road test, going to Abu Dhabi, defending his belt. But TJ, just with the it's been one fight. I mean, since his layoff, and I don't know if here against somebody who's been this active, who's looked this sharp, he's going to be able to get the job done. But certainly a
Yeah.
live dog. I can't fault anyone backing TJ this week.
Yeah, and just to kind of play up the TJ side just a bit more, I mean, he can wrestle, and Aljamain's takedown defense hasn't been great. So maybe the best way to kind of defend against the takedowns is to go after some of your own. And I think that would be a really good game plan for TJ to maybe execute. And the other thing too is this guy has such a chip on his shoulder. We saw Sterling against Jan the last time out. Like that was a big chip, like coming off that knee and everything. He won the favor of the fans back, and it kind of seems like TJ's in that position this time around. So just a little bit of narrative there. But to me, this is one of the toughest fights on the card to call. Just stylistically, I think Aljo's faster. I think he's better on the mat, but at the same time, just yeah, TJ can wrestle, man. And if he decides to shoot for takedowns, maybe that's the best way to win minutes.
Yeah. And just lastly on this one, I do see the decision. I don't think we're going to be finding a finish from TJ in this fight. If it is going to be inside, I think it's Sterling by sub. But I'm probably going to see 5 rounds out of these two, and that's why I'm hesitant to back the minus 175 favorite.
Yep. And just last word, TJ's been knocked out before, has never been submitted. I don't know that Sterling is the power, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, we haven't seen Sterling knocked out since that crazy Moraes knee, so I don't know that that passed there for TJ either.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you. I think the overs are probably a good angle here.
Yeah, I like that as well. All right, the featured bout, what some are calling the real main event here.
You are.
Yeah, I am. Bantamweight fight, number one contender Peter Yan going against the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. I'm pumped for this one. I mean, O'Malley finally getting a real test, finally getting an opportunity to, prove the doubters wrong. But I mean, Yan is an absolute monster. This is not going to be an easy fight for either guy. I imagine a striking heavy affair. I mean, Jan's a master of mixed martial arts. He can do literally whatever he wants in there against most opponents. But this stylistic matchup, I think it is going to be Jan, his counters, his defensive awareness compared to the offense put out by O'Malley. And that's what makes it so interesting. I mean, these two are both masters of distance, feints, great speed for this division, super technical strikers. From the Yan side, I mean, we're going to see a lot more kicks low, action in the clinch, whereas O'Malley will probably be looking to work from range and land those precision strikes as expected per usual. There's something about O'Malley. I mean, I've been on the train forever. You have been too. It's just the way he places punches. He really doesn't have incredible power for this division, but he is just a sniper out there. And against a guy like Yan who can snipe just as well, But we're going to see fireworks in this matchup. Now, normally in 5-round fights, Jan is known to start slow. In 3-round fights, that's not the case, but it will be imperative for O'Malley to get the early lead and bank that first round if he's going to have any chance here. The taller guy, the longer guy, somebody who can put out just as much volume. I love him at this number. Getting plus 220 on O'Malley, even in a tough matchup, in a fight that's likely going to decision, just like the co-main. I think he certainly can win minutes, win rounds, win exchanges with Peter Yan. O'Malley has a tendency to drop guys, not often because of huge power, but at least stun them, get them to fall. Great at following up. I think he's going to have his moments here. And I know Jan's a tactician. Jan's better in the clinch, better Muay Thai, way better kicks. But I just feel like in Abu Dhabi here, O'Malley is ready to make a statement, and this is the perfect opportunity to do so. He's going in against a top contender and, really nothing to lose. And I think his style bodes well for a matchup with Peter Yan, as, most fighters are going to have trouble getting inside, landing on his high guard that we often see out of him. But O'Malley's going to be able to find those openings and, again, win moments. I don't know if it'll be enough to win the fight, but again, at this number, I love it. It should be primarily a kickboxing match. And I think O'Malley at plus 220, as silly as it sounds, is a great value.
Yeah, I don't think it's great value personally. And I know there's a lot of people who hate on O'Malley. I'm not that guy. I've backed O'Malley every single fight since Quinones in terms of betting. I've been on this kid's hype train, but I don't think this is a good matchup for him at all. And I mean, if you look at the Pedro Munoz fight, obviously the eye poke, things started to go his way, but he lost that first round, like very clearly. He did not look good. Peter Yan, he had that great fight with Corey Sandhagen. To me, Sandhagen's very similar to O'Malley in terms of style. And honestly, I think he's a little bit better just in terms of the striking. Obviously, the path for O'Malley is clear. Pepper him at range, try to stay out of trouble, win on the scorecards. It works for some guys, but Peter, man, he's just going to keep walking forward, and he averages just under 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think he can go to that well if he needs to. Way more power, just amazing counters, and it's going to be tough for him to get Sean's timing. So like you said, I think the one path is maybe if he drops round one, kind of downloading data is the cliche that everyone uses with Peter Yan in that first round. But I mean, I don't know, man. Like, as much as I like Sean and I want to see him do well, this just feels like a dramatic step up. And I mean, it is. Like, if you just look at the rankings, he's going from 12 to the top guy, skipping over a bunch of guys that would be tougher matchups stylistically. But there's a reason Peter Yan is number one. That last fight with Sterling that he lost, it was very close, split decision. Like, it came down to the first round where barely anything happened, and that's how Sterling got the win. And yeah, I mean, the narrative, obviously, if this was a 5-round fight, I'd like Yan even more, but Peter Yan has never lost a 3-round fight. Yeah, man, to me, I think this should be minus 300, minus 400, which is around where it opened. O'Malley's a public sweetheart. He's getting a lot of money from the more casual fans. I'm not accusing you of being that, but yeah, man, I just don't see it here. And again, this is Peter Yan from Russia fighting in Abu Dhabi. O'Malley, who said he never wanted to fight overseas, said he'd only want to fight in Vegas or Arizona. He had to take this opportunity because you don't get the opportunity to fight the number one guy. I mean, maybe this is his Rocky story and he can pull off the upset, but to me, it would be a massive, massive upset. And I just don't see Peter Yan like just waiting for 2-3 rounds to fall behind on scorecards. Like, he pushed him at weigh-ins today, which usually isn't a great sign, but I think he's just trying to say, hey, like, you made it to the fight, kid, but now you actually have to go through with it. And I mean, I really like Sean. I just don't know that there's a game plan really you can put on a guy like Peter Yan. I mean, Aljo, Yan beat himself in that fight. He gave up his back twice and he lost those 2 rounds. If he doesn't make those mistakes and those scrambles, he wins and he's still the champ. And we're not talking about this matchup today. The reason this fight got made is because everyone else was paired up. And I know I sound like a hater right now, but I really do like O'Malley. I just think this is too much too soon. But that being said, I mean, there really isn't much to lose here. Like, if he lasts last to the scorecards, he's going to be better off than like Aldo was against Jan and a bunch of other guys. So it's just such a big step up, man. And I think the public's steaming O'Malley to the point that there's value on Jan on the money line. Anything under 300 to me is value. So I love Peter Yan here. I think the Sandhagen fight, that was a tougher spot in a very similar matchup against a guy with length and reach. But yeah, I don't know. I just like Jan here. We saw Jan taking Aljo down multiple times. If he is falling behind on strikes, he's going to go to the takedowns. And I'm not saying O'Malley has no grappling, but I don't think he has great takedown defense against a guy like Peter. So I don't know. I think this is Peter Yan's fight to win or lose. He knows it. If he wins here, he probably gets. I mean, if O'Malley wins, he certainly gets the title shot. If he wins here, TJ wins. I think Yan's next in line for the title shot. And then, I mean, if Aljo wins, it's hard to argue against Yan getting another title shot based on how that last fight went. And a lot of people consider it a 1-1 kind of, I don't know. It might be a trilogy in some people's eyes. So I don't know. I love Peter Yan. I really like Sean O'Malley. This is the first time I'm fading him ever. I even picked him against Marlon Vera. I picked him last time out against Munoz. I did not like how that first round went, but I did feel that the tide was turning in the second. But yeah, man, to me, this is just not the spot. Peter Yan's so accurate with his strikes. And yes, Sean is accurate. But the guys he's knocking out, the only one who's still in the UFC is Rulian Paiva, and he's a flyweight. Like, there's just no one on Peter Yan's level on his resume. And I mean, if we want to talk resumes about the main event, I think we have to talk about him here too. So I don't know. To me, it's Peter Yan all day. Anything under 300 is value.
All right. Well, I mean, I disagree on the breakdown, but we will see. I'm excited for this fight. We'll see what O'Malley can do. I mean,
yeah,
I think the number's crazy.
Yeah. I hope he does well, man. I don't want to see him get crushed or anything, but it's a tough spot.
Certainly. All right. The next fight. This was the hardest one for me when it comes to breaking them down. This lightweight belt between Beneil Dariush and Mateusz Gamrot. This is one I probably just can't bet based on the number we got here. I think Gamrot is the rightful favorite. I just don't think he's as wide as a 190 or 200 against someone as capable as Dariush. Riding a great win streak. Even talked about to be potential backup for this main event. That's not the case anymore. But that tells you how close Dariush was to a title shot. And now he's getting Gamrot, who's been on a great run since joining the UFC. It's just we haven't seen him against these top 5 lightweights quite yet, and that's why I'm hesitant to back him at a -200. Stylistically, it's interesting. I mean, I'd say Dariush is the better striker, more technical, better precision, whereas Gamrot has more power. And then on the mat, it's really going to be interesting when these two, get down there, because I mean, Dariush is an extremely capable grappler, very offensively focused, often able to take down and control opponents on the mat, look for submissions. But Gamrot's just big, strong, great grappler as well. The Kimura on Jeremy Stevens, like attacks like that are what make me nervous in those exchanges on the mat here. If I were to be backing Dariush, I think many perceive him to be the superior offensive grappler, where I'm not sure that's the case. And a large reason why I backed Gamrot in his main event against Arman Tsarukyan was because I was confident in his counter wrestling and counter grappling skills, which I do again believe to be the case here, being the bigger and stronger guy against Dariush. He's an explosive guy. I'm a big fan. Former KSW double champion. And, honestly, some could argue this is a value line because, if not for that bad split decision against Guram Kudaladzej in Gamrot's debut, we'd be looking at a 22-0 fighter. So, I mean, I really like what I've seen out of him. I'm just nervous to back him against Dariush, who's a dog, who's proven time and time again he can find a way to win these fights. I just don't know, his age and, what we've seen from him lately compared to this tear Gamrot's been on. If I'd be one to pull the trigger at, plus 160. So I'm probably not touching this fight. But Gamrot is my pick. I think he's the rightful favorite. This should be a banger too, though, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I think Gamrot's certainly the side. I mean, I've been impressed with Dariush's run, but when you compare it to Gamrot's, like they're on a very, very similar run. They both faced Diego Ferreira. Not to play too much MMA math, but Gamrot knocked him out. They both knocked out Holtzman. And then I mean, Beneil took Tony to a decision where Gamrot took Arman to a decision. And while I was an Arman backer in that spot, and I still don't love that he didn't get awarded the win, I'm more impressed with what I saw from Gamrot in that fight than what I saw from Beneil against Tony, this version of Tony. So this is just all kind of like, I don't know, resume crap. But like when you talk stylistically, I agree. Beneil is the better technical striker, and he's going to have the better jiu-jitsu. But when it comes to strength, it's certainly Gamrot's side on both the striking and the grappling. He's the more aggressive grappler. He averages nearly 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. I mean, Beneil's going to make the right moves on the ground, but I don't think he's going to be able to prevent Gamrot from taking him down consistently. And the big thing for me here is the power of Gamrot we've seen against Holtman, against Ferreira. Dariush gets rocked a lot. We saw it in the close fight. We saw it in the Ferreira fight. So yeah, I don't know if the chin's going to hold up. He's also coming off an injury, so there's going to be some ring rust likely. But yeah, man, I think the line's about right. Like, if it gets over 200, that's probably a little bit inflated. I think the thing with Gamrot, the one thing you have to worry about is if he makes a mistake, like in a scramble or something like that, or he gets too aggressive and gives up his neck or something to Dariush, because he does have very quick and sharp jiu-jitsu. But I think Son's making a stupid error. This is Gamrot's fight to win or lose.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think there are going to be more opportunities than just air. I mean, Dariush is serviceable everywhere, as I said. He could certainly take control and find a win. I think it is just going to be an issue against a guy, bigger, stronger. But certainly a very close fight. I could see it either way. All right, and the first fight on our main card, this women's flyweight matchup between Caitlin Chukagian and Manon Farrow. Farrow's a minus 200 favorite in this spot. She's somebody I've been backing since her entry into the UFC. And I like her again here. I mean, this is a tough matchup against Chukagian, who's for a while been the top contender in the women's flyweight division. I just think Farrow is this new next generation athlete that is going to be able to find success wherever this fight goes. She's landing 6.6 significant strikes per minute compared to 4.6 from Chukagian, a full 2 significant strikes more per minute that will likely end up in her winning most exchanges on the feet. I really like how aggressive Farrow is. She's been a little more hesitant in fights like facing Maya and the sort, but I really do think in this fight she's going to be putting it on Chukagian. Somebody who throws high volume, but not necessarily somebody who puts power behind those sorts of combinations. In addition to that, Farrow has also averaged 1.9 takedowns per 15. She mixes it up. She can bring fights to the mat. Her, as well as most French fighters, aren't going to be, apt to grapple super often. But I think she can mix it up in this fight, certainly, against somebody like Chukagian that has, struggled a bit in the past with the takedown. And then, Farrow's a tough test for her. Obviously, top-level opponents have gotten the better of her as of late. Chukagian got wins against Maya in a close fight against Amanda Ribas, but Farrow is going to be a tougher test for her today as well. And while these odds seem wide, I do think Farrow is the side. I think we're going to see a lot, more explosive activity out of her, and probably a convincing decision win.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on Farrow. I think she's the side. She lands more significant strikes per minute. She defends better per minute. Obviously, you can't tell everything by the stats. I think it's a bit overstated that this is 2 different generations of fighter because they're only like a year or 2 apart in age. But at the same time, Chukagian's been in wars. She definitely seen. I wouldn't even say she's on the downturn of her career because she's very clearly like a top 5 flyweight. But at the same time, Farrow is the more aggressive fighter. I think she is going to land the more powerful shots. What Chukagian does so well is kind of pepper her opponents at range, make a lot of loud grunting noises, and convince the judges she's winning on the scorecards. Farrow is a similar style, but she lands a lot more and she lands a lot bigger. And I think that's the difference. The thing with Chukagian, she's almost never not in a very close fight. So yeah, the line does feel a bit wide here. And the only times we've seen her struggle in the path are against these huge power punchers like Andrade and Shevchenko. I don't know that Ferro's that, but I do agree. I think this is just two women whose careers might be headed in different directions. Would it shock me to see Chukagan pull off a close decision here? I mean, a lot of people thought Ribas might have won that last fight against her, but yeah, I mean, it's just scary whenever it goes to the scorecards because judges seem to love Chukagan for some reason. For me, I'll take Ferro. I'll maybe tie her into a parlay or two, but to lay over -200 on her here just feels a little bit sketchy. Yeah, I mean the win over Maya is really nice, but Chuk handled her as well. Bueno Silva's aging well, the Ricci win's aging well. But yeah, I mean we haven't seen her tested extensively against this top half of the division. I think this is a fight that was made for her. Just a bit of narrative here. This was originally booked to happen in France, in Paris on that card. So it seemed like they were trying to build her up. And yeah, it got rescheduled to this card. So different location, but I think the idea from the UFC is the same. And sometimes that's all you really need to know.
Yeah, and I've been a big fan of hers. I've been backing her at similar numbers against those opponents, and that's why Chukagan is a step up. I'm not going to pull the trigger or bet heavy on her again at this number. But yeah, again, I think the right side. I think she has a very, very bright future here at women's flyweight. All right, now looking at our featured prelim bout. This is an interesting one, the welterweight matchup between Belal Muhammad and the undefeated Sean Brady. I mean, two grappling heavy fighters. It's going to be really interesting to see these two when it gets into those exchanges on the mat. Brady, a jiu-jitsu black belt, a very, very potent grappler, out grappling Craig Jones at Fury Grappling 3, really opened eyes to a lot of people after he was already undefeated through a few UFC fights. It's going to be interesting as Belal is usually the one aggressing and looking for takedowns in these spots, but it's never against somebody who's going to feel comfortable in those exchanges. You could prepare for Belal's style, wet blanket, all that you want, but someone like Luque or somebody like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, it just isn't going to feel the comfort in those grappling exchanges compared to somebody like Sean Brady. And I think that's why he is favored here. Belal likely the one initiating the exchanges on the mat, looking to shoot, and Brady probably counter wrestling to better effect than we've seen most of Belal's recent opponents. The line's close because this is a super close fight, and I'm not trying to lose any more money fading Belal Muhammad. I've done that plenty before, but I do think Brady, the undefeated fighter, should be able to keep his O in a fight likely to go decision. I don't see Belal being able to rack up 10 minutes of control time against a jiu-jitsu black belt and somebody this caliber, a grappler on the mat. On the feet, neither of these two are anything special. Belal has made vast improvements in his striking, but it's still not anything you're that intimidated by. He does well, adding pressure, adding volume to, complement his offensive grappling. But I really don't see either one of these guys having a huge edge on the feet. And if Brady's able to win positions on the mat, he's going to win this fight against Belal.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, man. And I've gone back and forth. I think right now I'm on the Belal side, and it's mostly experience. And I mean, the fact he's been training in Abu Dhabi with Khabib for this entire camp is definitely a plus. I think Brady's great, but I think the line is getting a bit juiced because of that undefeated record. When this fight was announced, it opened up. Belal was a -230 favorite. And while I don't think that was a good line at all, I don't think that we're seeing him at dog money now for any reason other than maybe that undefeated record, because really nothing's happened between now and then that things should flip this way. So yes, Brady's going to have the jiu-jitsu advantage, but I think Belal positionally is going to be fine. I think on the feet it's going to be competitive. But yeah, it just feels like a coin flip fight to me. So if you're going to give me plus money on the more experienced fighter who's been better tested, I guess I just side with Belal kind of from that angle. I think if these guys fought 10 times, I think it could go 5-5. It's that type of fight. And I think it goes to the decision. Neither guy has knockout power at the UFC level. So yeah, I like Bilal at the number, and it's kind of just a number thing for me here. I think they both can secure takedowns if they need to. I think Bilal's a little bit better at kind of mixing them into his strikes, and I like his cage wrestling a lot. I think Brady's actually the better cage wrestler. So I don't know. In the big cage, maybe that favors Bilal, maybe it doesn't. But we're getting home field advantage and a plus number on a guy who opened as a heavy favorite. Public steam, like on these huge cards, you get a lot more public steam from people who aren't consistently following the sport. And we always see the undefeated guys get a little bit more steam than they should. So to me, this is a pick 'em. It's a 50-50 fight. But if I'm getting value on Bilal with Khabib in his corner, I'll take it just off that. And it's not like a strong play or a conviction play by any means, but I just think he's been tested against the better fighters. And as impressive as Brady was against Chiesa's, I don't know. I feel like he has a foot halfway out the door now at this point. So I like Bilal here.
Does Chiesa have a submission over Bilal, or is that a mistake on my part?
I think that's a mistake, unless it happened years ago. No,
that could be someone else on the card.
yeah,
All right,
Bilal's last loss was Jeff Neal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was years ago. So
Well, very close fight. Again, I'm not confident saying Brady's going to win, but
I'm not confident either way.
That's the side I'd lean. All right. Now this middleweight matchup, Makhmud Muradov taking on Kyle Borralho. These odds are pretty wide. I mean, Muradov is somebody who I've been tempted to take here at a plus 180. I just think the discrepancy on the mat is going to be the deciding factor in this one. What we've seen out of Borralho is very good fight IQ, mixing it up when he needs to, but also being very serviceable on the feet. He's going to have a wider arsenal of strikes than the boxing heavy Makhmud Muradov. But again, I think if he does decide to take this fight to the mat, we have seen Muradov a bit exposed there in the past. And I don't think he's going to realize much success against somebody who's able to get control, able to, fight for positions rather, effectively on the mat compared to somebody in Muradov that has struggled against, that style of fight. On the feet, he could spark Borralho. I mean, we've seen solid striking out of the Brazilian thus far. It's just I think when it comes to like boxing combinations, especially the second, the third round, he's going to start getting touched up. So it will be imperative for him to get this fight in the mat, and that's why I'm probably not going to be betting him or including him in parlays at a minus 200, minus 220 number. But I think he is the side, especially if he implements a grappling heavy approach. He's going to look like an even bigger favorite than this in my opinion. But I mean, this is a buy low opportunity on Muradov. He had a lot of hype coming into the UFC. I don't know if it's warranted just based on, his recent performances that we've seen, but I certainly can't fault anyone for backing him at a number this wide. I don't think Borralho's quite warranted of, a favorite of this size against an opponent that was ranked at middleweight not too long ago. But yeah, I think if he decides to take this fight to the mat, it's going to be his to lose.
Yeah, I think the thing with Muradov's ranking, that was more just a result of how shallow that division's been. It's been better lately, but when he was ranked, it really wasn't. All of his wins are over guys who are no longer on the UFC roster. And I agree with you. I think he's going to be very dangerous early here. I think he's the much, much better striker. But Borralho has the grappling advantage and he has the cardio advantage. So if you like Muradov and you want to take the dog shot, maybe take him by first round finish, or take him by KO, because that's really his only path. Borralho touts himself as a fighting nerd. I think that's the name of his camp. But he has shown a very high fight IQ. I think against a credentialed boxer like this, he's going to know better. He's not going to stand and trade with him. And if he does, he has to lose that fighting nerd title, because that would be incredibly stupid. Borralho averages almost 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think he shoots here. Maybe he can't get the sub right away, but I think maybe in the second, third round, we see him get the finish. And yeah, I mean, I'm not super impressed with Borralho. I think he's a good fighter. But yeah, there's just a clear stylistic discrepancy in this matchup. So to me, it's Borralho, as long as he leans on the grappling, and he's shown that when he needs to, he will. Like, he just came off that fight with Petrosian, a credentialed kickboxer. He just grappled. It was a boring fight. He kind of just blanketed him for 15 minutes, but he got the job done. I could see similar here, but given Muradov's questionable cardio, I wouldn't be surprised to see Brawley get the finish either. But I'm with you. That's certainly the side.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the look for that middleweight matchup. We can move right along then to light heavyweight, as Volkan Oezdemir will be taking on Nikita Krylov. This is an interesting fight. I mean, Oezdemir is someone that I really have not been looking to back the past couple of years. I think he is on a bit of a decline, but there he was pulling out a good win, smart win against Paul Craig in his last bout. I took Craig pretty confidently in that spot. And I mean, the first round was exactly what I wanted. Craig playing in his guard, getting chances for submissions. It's just Oezdemir was able to stay out of it. I think this matchup against Krylov is very different. Krylov's also coming off a win, very quickly disposing of Alexander Gustafsson. He struggled against like top 10 caliber fighters, but I really think against Oezdemir in this fight, we're going to see a decisive advantage in terms of speed, in terms of precision striking. And, I think mixing in the grappling as well gives Krylov the edge in this spot. It makes sense that he's the favorite. And honestly, this is a good price on him with the ability to either grapple or stand against someone in Oezdemir that I see as declining. With Oezdemir, it's the power that you have to worry about, him landing the big shots. He's not a super high volume guy traditionally. We have seen him, tick up a bit depending on the fight in terms of overall volume. But I don't see him edging Krylov in terms of strikes landed in this fight either. So Krylov's my lean here as the favorite. I don't see myself flipping to Oezdemir, but it's certainly a tough one to call. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you on Krylov, but I don't think I love the number, honestly. And it's not even a knock on Krylov or that I like Oezdemir. It's just that these are two guys who are both extremely inconsistent at this point in their career. I mean, Krylov looked great when he came out against Craig and then got caught in that triangle. And then we saw Oezdemir fight a good game plan against Craig, but Craig was landing really good strikes on him, which to me is concerning. I think Oezdemir is probably the better striker here because he does have that power advantage, but I don't think it's a very wide margin, and I certainly see Krylov as the better grappler. So if both of these guys come in on their best day for this age, like Oezdemir in his prime, I think would be better than Krylov, but they're both past their prime. But if they both come in as good as they can at this point in their careers, I do like Krylov, and I don't hate the number. It's just these are two guys who we've seen make mistakes in many fights, so it wouldn't shock me to see Krylov maybe shoot for an ugly takedown from too far out, get caught with an uppercut, something like that. I agree Krylov's the side. I don't know how easy it's going to be to take Oezdemir down, but he should be able to kind of grind him up against the cage and work him that way if he can't get the clean takedown. So I like Krylov here. I think he's live for a submission finish, but I don't think it's super likely, especially coming off that Craig fight. But at the same time, I think Ozdemir's lost speed. And I mean, yeah, he still carries power, but what made that power so great was how quick he used to be able to get it off. And I don't know that he can anymore. So I'm on Krylov here. Very low confidence play though. Just two guys that's really tough to put your money on.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, Krylov making those decisions in his fight against Paul Craig certainly make me hesitant to want to, back him in any spot. I mean, I did against Gustafsson, but here I'm not sure I'm going to be pulling the trigger. All right. And now the final fight of the preliminary portion, Zubaira Tukhugov against Lucas Almeida. A bit of a preview for the main event with Russia versus Brazil, but no, not quite. Very different fight. Almeida unproven, but honestly, that big win against Trezano his last time out, a solid performance against Zellhuber, and thus far averaging way more strikes per minute than Tukhugov has accustomed to landing. Tukhugov's interesting. I mean, he's shown so many flashes of brilliance, but also periods of fights where he's just very inactive, standing around, waiting, looking to counter. He's not a guy that I could really trust to wrestle. He mixes it in, but it's not often that we do see him, go to the well, go takedown after takedown. And he's somebody that really hasn't had the cardio to do so either. But Tukhugov is also just a volatile fighter to back with all the inactivity. I mean, last October was his most recent fight. He's not in there very often. We don't know what sorts of improvements he makes in outside of the cage. And I mean, Almeida, we've at least seen recently his ability to win fights in the UFC his ability to put out pace, put out volume. And I mean, I think at dog money here, he's the side that I'd look in a fight that's likely going to go to decision. Takagov is somebody who has won close decisions, split decisions in the past. But in a fight where, he could get doubled, triple up in terms of significant strikes landed, I think that is going to be a favorite you'll want to stay away from. And then backers that think Takagov is going to be able to just take Almeida down, control him all 3 rounds. I wouldn't rely on that. I don't know if that's the case. We haven't seen that out of him often. Sometimes he is focused more so on the strikes, on the kicks, than he is on the grappling. And I could see that costing him against Almeida, somebody who is a dynamic striker, somebody with power, and a live dog, in my opinion. I think I am going with the Almeida side, but Takagov, obviously the more proven guy, the favorite here. I just see Almeida being live at the number to win the decision, probably by out-voluming Takagov.
Yeah, so I'm on the Tuhugov side, and for me, it's stylistic. I think the reason Almeida looked so good last time out was Trezano. All of Trezano's success in the UFC has come pressuring opponents. We saw it in that fight against Ludovic Klein. And yeah, Tukagov, similarly to Makhachev when he strikes, is a defensive striker. So he's better when someone's coming at him. And yeah, he's not going to be pressuring Almeida the way Trezano was. And it's a very small sample size, but we look at Almeida's statistics. He absorbs nearly 6 strikes per minute. He does put out a lot of volume, but he's also eating a lot of shots. I like that Zubaira can mix in the takedowns if he needs them. I agree he doesn't have the cardio to blanket him for 15 minutes, but if he's falling behind in a round, he has that and he can go to that well. Almeida has just a 50% takedown defense. Tukagov, I mean, yeah, he's had some disappointing performances. That loss at Dewadu definitely stands out. But he looked great last time out against Ramos, in my opinion. That was definitely the best version of him we've seen. He's in that camp with Bilal and Khabib and Islam. I think that's certainly a plus. If it does go to the judges' scorecards, I think that could also be a plus for him as well. Close fight. Don't knock you at all for the dog money. I think Almeida definitely has a power advantage on the feet here. But I just think Tuhugov is going to be the more technically sound striker. I think his defensive style kind of plays well in this matchup, and I like that he can lead on the takedowns if he needs to. So not really a confident play, but I do think Tuhugov's the side. I don't hate him at this number, but yeah, Almeida's power does concern me a little bit for sure.
Yeah, and again, I think this is a fight that we are going to see the judges' scorecards. I will just mention, with the home cooking, Abu Dhabi advantage, you'd think that to be the case, but that fight against Dawudi was in Abu Dhabi, and
that wasn't close.
The judges got it right. I mean, yeah, Takagov argued, but
he was
after
running away.
That 3rd round, there was no way.
The crowd was booing. Yeah. I think not as much as the judges are just going to pick the Russian, but if the crowd is so heavily behind a guy, Tuhugov, the crowd kind of turned on him in that fight because he was running away from Dewadu. It was pretty embarrassing.
And those are the performances that always make me hesitant to want to.
I don't want to put much money on
as a favorite.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Now to the early prelim portion of the card, Abubakar Nurmagomedov taking on Gadzi Omar Gadziev here at welterweight. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I like the Abubakar side here. I was on Godzi last time out against Barallo. I thought he'd have the wrestling ability to kind of negate Barallo's style, but he got out-grappled bad, and it was not a good look. Yeah, I mean, Abubakar on the other end, I mean, that loss to Zawada certainly hasn't aged well at all. But I just think he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think he's the more proven fighter. There's just nothing about Godzi to me other than maybe the price on the betting line that makes me like him here. I think Abubakar is going to be, I don't know, I think the better striker. Like Godzi throws just over 1 significant strike or lands just over 1 significant strike per minute. That's not a plus at all. And Abubakar, I mean, he certainly shows holes in his game, but a near 70% striking defense. He has that experience in the PFL. Godzi, I mean, that last performance against Barala was absolutely terrible, and I had money on him there. I'm a little bit sour. I'm a little bit biased. But yeah, I think Nurmagomedov's the side here once again. But yeah, it's not a confident play at this number.
Yeah, I mean, at this number, I probably will, get to the window with Nurmagomedov, but yeah, it's not super confident for me either. I really like his performance against Gooden the last time out, mixing the striking with the grappling. I mean, his hands were down for a majority of that fight, nervous about the shot. But Omar Gadzhiev could very well be the same. I mean, 10 minutes of control time by Caio Bahalio against him. I think Nurmagomedov could take a similar path. He's a international master of sport in combat sambo, so he should have the advantage bringing this fight to the mat, and I see him having success getting it there. So I see him as the rightful favorite. Obviously, the name Nurmagomedov on this card, but it is Russian versus Russian. I think he's the pick though, just based on the skills we've seen and his game as a whole. If he takes Omar Gadzhiev down, this should be a pretty easy win.
I like it.
All right. And now back to middleweight for a matchup between Armen Petrosyan and AJ Dobson. This fight's interesting. This is more of a play on the odds for me. I think neither one of these guys warrant a minus 220 line. So Dobson as the dog is probably the way I'm going to be looking. Petrosyan's been taking down 9 of 13 attempts in his last 3 fights. And Dobson is known to mix in the wrestling a bit. I mean, he's certainly got power on the feet. He could certainly, drop Petrosyan or land something lucky on the feet. But if he decides to go to the well with the, takedowns here, bringing Petrosyan to the mat, he should find success in this fight. He's not as, tall, but he is a big guy. He's a great size for this weight class. And, on the feet, it's certainly not 50-50. Petrosyan's the better striker. I just think from what we've seen in terms of his takedown defense, if you're able to take him down and hold him there, it's going to be an easy night at the office when facing Petrosyan. It is just situations where you aren't a competent enough grappler to keep him down. You end up wasting energy and losing when things return to the feet. But I mean, both these guys under 10 pro fights. I really don't think either are anything special. And that's why if Dobson relies on that wrestling, takes down the kickboxing heavy, fighter, he should be able to find success and cash this dog ticket. But it's not a confident play. It's more of a play on the number for myself.
Yeah, this is one of those fights where I think I need to spend a little bit more time. I know we only have a day or so left, but I do want to look into Dobson's grappling credentials a bit more. I rewatched that fight with Malkoun where he got dominated, but obviously Malkoun's kind of an outlier when it comes to wrestling. He can make even a good wrestler look bad, as he did against Maximov in spite of the injury. Petrosyan's definitely going to be the better striker here. I think he knows he needs to work on that takedown defense. I expect that to improve. That low number is because guys just have been constantly shooting on him. Yeah, I do agree the line might be too wide. Dobson has that equalizer in his power. But yeah, Petrosyan's going to be the much better striker. I think the big cage favors him both in the striking with his style and in defending against takedowns. But yeah, I just haven't been that impressed with Dobson. I mean, he had that nice KO win on Contender Series, but that guy he knocked out hasn't fought since. So it's tough to really know how to gauge that one. Nothing really to write home about on the regional scene. I mean, he's certainly an athletic freak, or a physical specimen rather, but yeah, I mean, there's just nothing about him that I'm all that excited about outside of that power. And I think Petrosyan is too good of a striker to probably get caught. So it's going to come down to those wrestling credentials. I'm going to spend a little time digging into that this evening. So again, to plug our article either Friday night, Saturday morning, whenever we get it out, hopefully early this week with the early start time. This is one to maybe wait and see for me. But right now, I do like the Petrosyan side, unless there's something about Dobson's wrestling I'm missing. He certainly didn't show it in the Malkoun fight. That I think Petrosyan's the side here.
I mean, I think that's fair. I think with the striking edge, he is the rightful favorite. It's just I think the dog side's going to be the play for me. Yeah, a bit too wide. All right, now to flyweight, a matchup between Muhammad Makhachev and Malcolm Gordon. We're looking at a minus 1,200 now for Muhammad Makhachev as he takes on this matchup. I'll let you get this one started.
Yeah, I mean, you got your favorite prospects here with O'Malley and I forget who else, but yeah, Makhachev's one of mine. I've been on this kid for a while. 20-0 as an amateur, really credentialed grappler. He was tested on the regional scene before he got the nod into the UFC. Took out Cody Durden in under a minute in his debut. Looked great against a credentialed grappler in Charles Johnston his last time out. And he's getting Malcolm Gordon here, which feels like a gift from the UFC. Gordon's coming off 2 wins, one against Francisco Figueiredo in a really ugly fight, and then Dennis Bonder, who he only got the win over because of an injury. So it's nice. Oh yeah, you're fighting a guy coming off 2 wins, but they're really questionable wins in my opinion. Sorry, losing my voice here. But yeah, Makhachev's the side all day. I think he can get it done inside the distance. Gordon has not been known to be a durable fighter. I think most people know that at this point, but if you can get a decent number on the inside, I think you go for it. I think he can certainly finish him here via submission. And I was impressed by the improvements in his striking his last time out against Johnson. I think we're going to continue to see massive improvements. This kid is still only, what, 21 years old? 22 years old now. He just turned 22 in July. But yeah, one of my favorite prospects on the roster. He's fighting in Abu Dhabi. Dagestani kid, moved to UK. I think he's going to have the home crowd behind him. Seen him posing with Hasbullah, which is always a little bit of good luck as well. So Makhachev is my guy. You know how high I am on him. I just think the UFC is feeding him a guy coming off 2 wins here. Probably the easiest win of a guy coming off 2 wins there is in the division. So I'm all over Makhachev. I'm really hoping he finishes him quick and he can get another fight in before the end of the year, because this just doesn't feel like enough of a step up in competition for him.
Yeah, this is going to be easy. Malcolm Gordon really has little to offer on the feet, and well, what's he going to do? Shoot? Like there really isn't much that he can do in this matchup. Makhachev is a lethal striker. Well, we've seen him have success using his range, winning fights with striking in the past, and yeah, just a dominant grappler. As soon as Gordon decides, okay, I can't win on the feet, time to shoot, or time to get into those exchanges, maybe Makhachev just takes him down right away.
Yeah, I think
He's
Makhachev
not
can
going to
lead the
find
dance.
success. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing Gordon's good at is boxing, but I don't think he's ever going to be in boxing range. Makhachev's best strikes are these huge sweeping kicks. I think if he's frustrated by that and he shoots, he's going to get subbed. So yeah, there's so many paths for Makhachev here. Sans an injury or something freaky happening, I think he dominates.
And myself will probably be playing the round 1 in this spot.
Mm,
I see him getting a quick finish.
nice, I like it.
All right, and then the last fight to break down our opener, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturday. Tune in for Carol Rosa versus Lena Landsberg here at women's bantamweight. I don't think too highly of Rosa, but I think she is the pick here. Sizable favorite. Her loss to McMahon, a lot of people are, oh, she got dominated wrestling. I still think highly of McMahon, even at her age. And now, facing a 40-year-old Landsberg, I don't see much resistance that Rosa is going to find. Landsberg's best spots are in the clinch, using Muay Thai, and it's just not the style of fight that I think she's going to find a ton of success. Perhaps takedowns would be one way that Landsberg could, steal this one over Rosa, but she's not the kind of fighter to shoot over and over. Rosa should be able to win regardless of where this fight takes place, apart from those, exchanges in the clinch or alongside the cage. So the rightful favorite, but not a fight I'm going to be touching with a lot of other options to choose from on the stack card.
I actually think Rosa's a decent parlay piece here. And hear me out. I mean, even with that McMahon fight where she was taken down a bunch of times, she has a 72% takedown defense in the UFC. She's coming off a submission win and some sort of grappling circus I'm seeing on her record now. She's certainly been working on her grappling. She's been working on her jiu-jitsu. I think she's going to have a jiu-jitsu advantage here. She throws out, like, Landsberg's known as a striker, but she doesn't put out much volume. Rosa's landing nearly 7 significant strikes per minute. And like you said, I mean, the loss to McMahon, that's an Olympic level wrestler. Like, you can't get too hard on any girl for that. Before that, she had some decent wins over Mello, Edwards, Correa. No one great, but certainly better than what we've seen from Landsberg recently. I mean, Landsberg in her prime, sure, she was good, but that Kienzat fight came after what, like 3 or 4 year layoff, and she did not look great there. I think Rosa rolls here. I don't really get the placement on the card as the opener, but I think she could score a finish potentially too. too, and you probably get a really nice juicy plus number on the inside the distance. I like Rosa here. This feels like a get right spot. It felt like the UFC was trying to build her by giving her that McMahon matchup. She didn't pass the test, so they're saying, hey, we'll take one step back and then two forward. So here's Landsberg and possibly a retirement fight. So I like Rosa here. I think she rolls.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the side. I'm not sure if I'll be getting to the window, but yeah, Rosa should be getting the win in that one. Great card. I mean, I'm super excited. UFC 280 it could have that legendary status with some of these fights that we have on the slate. Certainly looking forward to it. As always, our full write-up with a breakdown and official prediction for each fight. We'll be live on Dine Sports likely by Friday evening, and we hope everyone enjoys the card. Nick, thank you for joining me. Enjoy the fights this weekend.
Let's get it. Good luck, everyone.